I couldn't process it. It felt like I was watching that kind of shocking tragedy scene in a movie. Thinking back, it was always like that. I've had this bad habit of viewing the problems right in front of me from an outside perspective. It was the same back in high school when I considered just like this. I could only face the facts in front of a camera. As a result, I've realized I no longer have enough soul left to endure any more deaths. I'll die in a place that holds memories for me. Start to finish, Goodbye Eri is an intentional experience. You as the reader always know what the story is about, what is generally happening, the themes and the messaging, but never do you know anything to be absolutely true. Tatsuki Fujimoto, mostly known for his work on Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch, managed to create a one-shot that combines his natural wit and style with a psychological drama that even ascends beyond the only thing I can think to compare it to: Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue. And I know that for those in the know, that is a lot of praise, maybe even blasphemous, but I think it's warranted absolutely. Goodbye Eri is about a boy who likes movies, and a boy who chooses to make some movies. That's the least spoilery way I could possibly think to say it, following him through his middle school to middle-aged self, using the creation of a movie as a framing device. Our lead Yuta then bends the reader to which parts of the manga are truly real, which are scripted, and more so, even as we know movies are being made and presented in the story, and those movies are autobiographical, which parts of that are also causing us to be misled. We learn opinions and reception from different people in his class about the films he's releasing in their real world, some of which are then reused and clipped for future projects. That makes us know that Yuta is not always entirely honest in his portrayals of people, and it's constantly come back to in two different ways. From adding a pinch of fantasy, and by the tendency to idealize and see the positives in people, often cutting out negative aspects of the movie's subjects that would cause us to understand the situation we're seeing in a less pure light, sometimes even of a blatantly abusive fashion. Yuta at the core of this all, and the reason I think he's so interesting to root for as we continue, is that he is grieving and he's good-hearted. It's unconventional. He doesn't have a strong grasp on how to grieve pretty much at all through the story. He wants to live in a beautiful place. He wants his memories to show this good life and these good people. At the same time, he's too scared to take that fullness of life into his hands. His coping method, something somewhat forced onto him, is the movie making. It becomes a shield for him to keep from actually healing or realizing the things around him. As he realizes much later in life, he had always been using the camera to sort of separate himself from the tragedy around him, depersonalize and see the world as if it were a story. This isn't a tragic moment for my life, this is a tragic scene for this character. Eventually he realizes this, and the weight of the grief is something he doesn't think he can take. But he's wrong, and he finds his way. If I went into spoilers, you could see just how many things can be taken so many ways, in literal terms and in its meta. Like the fact that the one-shot itself is basically a screenplay, meaning even the finished manga itself could be interpreted as the full story or full movie, unknowingly giving you the context of the previous two movies within the story, repeating events and themes even as you don't realize they're being repeated, and then ending in the way that was foreshadowed from the beginning without you possibly being able to foreshadow what's happening, even with my vague words here. I don't want to spoil strongly for the time being, and I don't think it's possible to talk about this series without spoiling, so I just want to connect to this and what resonated with me the most, what made me drop everything and choose to focus on this as my next video. You know, I feel really happy. I've been working super hard, finding lots of new things to work towards, but this has been a hard year. Not just that, I realize it's always been like that, but I wonder when it started. The sentimentality, the loneliness, the feeling that I had no one to be honest with or no one who could understand me. That used to be too much for me to handle. In my college, I remember feeling that there was no way out as I started making videos and working through my struggles. But even though I knew it would happen, I felt a hesitance in letting my real-life people know about my channel. I told myself that I would do so when I hit 100k subscribers, like a goal, but really, I didn't think I would ever reach that far, or that many people. In fact, I remember feeling absolutely listless when I did reach 100k for multiple months as I had no idea what to do with my life. I haven't really mentioned it except for to one person once before, so maybe this is a bad idea to put in a video, but I never really thought I would get far at all, in any way. I remember at high school graduation, a part of my brain felt like it opened up as I realized most of my life is going to be happening outside of school, and that life was just about to begin. I always had the feeling that everything would go wrong for me, and one day, no matter what, it would be too much. I would just end it. Even when life was getting better for me in 2020, in the back of my head I had this sinking feeling a little bit, every now and then, at night, when I couldn't sleep, that I was doomed to fail, doomed to disappear, and that this was just one high until an inevitable crash and burn. It's something I can ignore or try to rationalize, but when you can't sleep at night, it sometimes resurfaces, like being a failure, being a quitter is a part of my DNA. This feeling has mostly vanished since I started YouTube, with exception to a few times, like I said, at night whenever it creeps back in. Another weird moment that changed this dynamic was when I got that 100k. My family isn't malicious or evil, but truth be told, I would keep these parts of myself, the sad me, the frustrated me, the hopeless, the scared, locked away on the earlier days of my channel, because I knew that nobody I knew would see them. Now that anyone can see, I feel too uncomfortable to share myself most of the time. After I started working through my problems, like I was a character in my own autobiographical story, real life seemed to not resonate with me as hard. I bawled my eyes out at every little thing in shows and games and loved them. Self-inserting, experiencing life stories from the most tragic to the most heartwarming, but in my reality, I barely could break out of my deadpan detachedness. When I learned my parents were getting divorced in 2018, I remained cold and logical. With my last girlfriend, I sometimes was unfixably distant. Even as we sat down and broke up, I have never shed a tear. When my family celebrated my birthday, I couldn't even feel happy. I felt like a stranger in my own body viewing from the third person. But when I watch basically any show, if I'm alone, it's so easy to cry freely. I had an emergency operation at 3 a.m. in February this year. It wasn't life or death, although it was serious. And I remember I spent all day fighting myself not to call the ambulance, because maybe this is just my time. Maybe my clock is up. Now, a mere week after I finished moving, my sister informs me my grandpa has 4 aneurysms on his body, 2 on his kidney and 2 on his heart. If anyone doesn't know, like I admittedly didn't, an aneurysm is kind of like a very small water balloon that fills up with a bit of blood every time your heart beats. When it becomes too tight, it pops, killing the person almost immediately. It's like a time bomb strapped to his chest, and at his age, the doctors are too afraid that any intervention may only escalate the process. He's reportedly gotten much worse very quickly, but I still haven't been able to see him. I'm desperately waiting for enough money to come in so that now I can buy a plane ticket and go see my grandpa before he passes. I'm already in debt from my own surgery earlier this year, and I owe some people money. I think this is where that voice comes in to remind me of my oncoming doom. But frustratingly, I actually don't feel that. I feel like a robot. I keep idealizing the future I'm hoping for, and keep telling myself to keep trying my hardest, but why am I so callous to the real suffering and death around me? I don't want to be, but what else am I supposed to do? If I stop doing my best to get things done and move forward, I'll surely be swallowed up. But the effort that it takes to keep going, maybe my coping mechanisms have already left behind something that is important not to move forward without. I couldn't process it. It felt like I was watching the kind of shocking tragedy scene in a movie rather than myself. Thinking back, it was always like that. I have this bad habit of viewing the problems right in front of me from an outside perspective. Everything I went through, positive and negative, it was the same back in high school, and then again in college. When I considered I could only face the facts in front of a camera, only contextualize and share my feelings if the recipient was abstract, non-human, a page, a lens, an edit, a piece of audio, or a website. You're not inhuman, though. I've seen enough now to know how real you all are. From the most casual to the most serious, from the silliest to the most supportive, and even to the idiots. You are there, watching, listening. And that's why it makes this so hard.